Lovely to see you, and thanks for attending. I would just like, before we open up Q&A, I would just like to do a little poll just to find out who is in the audience. I just want to find out about the experience. If I could maybe just give you 20, 30 seconds to answer the question that's coming up. Wow. Oh, interesting. Oh, very interesting. So it looks like, very good. So we've got about 80% of you online have more than 5 years teaching experience, which is very interesting, and 20% with less than 5 years. So thank you for doing that. Close that there. So first of all, do you have any questions that you would like to put to me based on what I've just spoken about? I've got a few questions here as well that I'd like to see if anyone would like to answer. And I know there have been a couple of questions in the chat room as well. But are there any other questions that people would like to submit at the moment? While we're waiting, I think a couple of questions in the chat that I would just like to talk about now. Gabby asked, when does the process of reflection start? Is it after the first job or at your first job as a teacher? And you know, my goodness, I started by saying, you know, this is our life and it's a great profession, and I strongly believe in reflection as a tool for the good of our career and also our mental well-being. So I would say yes, from the first job, from your teaching course, start to do this. And a little hint, I would say, with anything, and I think I touched upon it in the webinar there. You think it's going to take a long time. I'm talking about reflection here. You think it's something that, oh, I can't be bothered, I'm not going to get round to it, I've got something else to do. But just add on 2 minutes to anything that you're doing. So what I said to you when I was sharing the reflective tool, the holistic reflective tool, was when you log off today, just now, after this, before you leave the room, before you go and do something else, give yourself 5 minutes and start to try that reflective tool. It's the starting sometimes that we put off. Once we've started it, we're hooked in and we're going to have more buy-in to it. I mean, very often, for example, I don't know about you, but after a lesson or after a meeting that I've had, I don't tell people that I'm free again straight away in work. I sit in my room and I spend 2 or 3 minutes to reflect on how did that go? What areas could I have worked on better? What would have happened if this, you know, thinking hypothetically and then setting myself a little goal for the next time and I'm in that situation. That just needs 2 minutes. And that starts from day one, I think, of our teaching career. Now I can see there's a couple of questions in the Q&A. Let me.
Yeah, Fiona, there is, sorry for coming in. Gabi has just asked the question that has just popped in my mind as well. Like, how do we ask the right question to reflect on? I think asking the right questions is really crucial, but probably we should keep it simple in a way. So
yeah, and I think that there's a number of things there. If you're not sure, and if you're newly qualified, or even, you know, after 5+ years experience, hook up with somebody so that you can bounce things off of. Now, that could be your line manager as well, or it could be another teacher with a similar experience to you. And get their input. Ask yourself open-ended questions. Ask yourself questions that don't just create a feel-good. It's the same when we ask our students. You don't just ask a student, did you like that? Did you understand that? Ask them, what could I have done differently? But take that a step further. What could I have done differently? And what would the outcomes have been if I had done that differently? So take it to that other step as well with an open-ended question when you're reflecting. And again, I think that's something that you can do with a lesson plan. So as I said, when you're reflecting, when you're actually in the classroom, you have your lesson plan in front of you. just make little notes at each stage about how you are observing the students are reacting to what you've done and how you did it. And then finishing the lesson, that's when you sit down, you have 2 minutes, 3 minutes to look back on the notes and start asking yourself, what could I have done differently? What was successful about that? What was not so successful about it? Always remembering to look at the positive aspects as well. What went well there? And how could I build on it? Very often we're so self-critical. It's easy to just look at the negative and think, oh, that was terrible. Oh, I should have done this and this and this. No, for goodness sake, you know, be happy with yourself as well, and congratulate yourself and think, how do I build on the positives?
I love, Fiona, the fact that you focus on the positive as well, because as you are saying, we can be hard on ourselves, and it's important to notice what we have achieved, where we are, being realistic about that, but celebrating ourselves a little bit, but still like accepting where we are, being okay with that, but aiming for more as well, looking forward as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, very true. I think we've got another couple of questions and something else that came up in the chat room as well. How do we control the quality of CPD activities? And I think, again, that's a really good question, because there is so much out there and we can become quite overwhelmed by what is available to us. I think the first thing to do is to identify what we're interested in, what areas we want to focus on, what is going to work for us. And that's something that I think we take into the classroom as well. Ask your students what worked for you, what was useful for you, and then ask those questions back to yourself. Find your areas of interest, what you want to develop. And then I think it's about a number of things, again, involving other people. If you work in a school, bring this into the staff room discussion. Bring it into the discussion that you have with your line manager, with more experienced people, so that you can also get guidance as to what kind of quality is out there in terms of CPD. And then the structure that I talked about. So giving yourself a structure so that you're focusing on legitimate sites and legitimate areas of CPD to work on. And then again, you know, we're testing the water. Some things will work for you and some things won't. Some things that I think are really useful, you may think, oh my goodness, what a load of rubbish. You know, I think it's also subjective, isn't it? There's another couple of questions here in the, let me see. Someone asks in the question box here, how much time would you dedicate to these ideas for professional development per week and per month? And that's a good question, because I think my whole feeling is that it should be integrated and broken down so that you don't even notice that you're doing it. You know, of course, sometimes you're going to attend a big conference, even if it's online. You might be going to TEFL later in the year, and that's a big dedication within your year. But apart from that, I would say that, again, in every single lesson, no two lessons are the same. So every single lesson is an opportunity for professional development, as long as you are questioning what you're doing. And I think the comment that Gabby put into the chat room about Penny Ure mentioned that you can have 40 years of teaching experience or 1 year of teaching experience repeated 40 times. And I think that's very important there. You know, you want to keep moving. That's the whole idea of continuing professional development. It doesn't need to be every single second of your career, but keep it small, keep it focused, interesting to you, and integrated into everything you do. So don't think, right, Friday is going to be CPD day, because if you do that, that won't work. You will get to Friday and you think, oh, I'll do it next Friday. But break it down and integrate it into everything that you're doing professionally. There's another question I saw here. When preparing goals, is it advisable to set a list of aims and objectives? This is from Malcolm, and a good question. And I don't feel as if there's any hard set rules to this, to be honest. Um, I touched upon mini goals as well as smarter goals. What I would say is going back to less is more. And when I'm working with and when I've worked with my teaching teams in the past, and we've looked at setting goals together, I think it's important just to have 2 or 3 goals with mini goals and timelines as to how you're going to achieve them, and keep it on track. So whether you're self-motivating to reach your goals or whether you're working with someone, you want to keep checking in. So you have your big smart goal, your big smarter goal, but break that into bite-sized pieces. How are you going to get there? Keep reflecting. How are you getting on? Is it fitting in? Have you been unrealistic with your time? Don't just set a goal and let it sit there. Work on it. You're doing this for a reason, and remember the bigger picture. This is about you. It's about enjoying your profession. And to be honest, I mean, I said at the beginning, I've been in this career for 30 years. And I was sitting at lunch today and I was saying to someone, I have loved so much of what I have done professionally, and I never tire of it. And that to me is the bigger picture when you're setting a goal. So sorry, maybe Malcolm going off on a tangent to your question, but find a way that works for you. And I'm also happy, as I said, get in touch with me through the forum, speak to me if you see me out. I'm really happy to continue with these kinds of conversations. I have, if there's, I think that's all our questions there, but I have another couple of questions to ask. And I don't know if anyone in the audience wants to say, but I wondered if there were any feelings about anything that I said, if you would like to elaborate, like me to elaborate on any of the CPD ideas, things like self-observation, for example. Has anyone tried this? Would you like more information about this? Just have a little look in the chat room as well. This is me multitasking now. So let me just see, what would you like to achieve professionally in the next 12 months?
I mean, I can add to that, to that self-reflection part, because what I do, for instance, when I prepare for my lessons, I can actually show an example somehow. So I have the plan step by step, what I'm about to do in the class. And then when I I usually put it on scrap paper because I love trees. And then at the end, you can see my comments regarding the tasks. Using smiley faces, sad faces, could be better faces as well, just thinking back what went well, but this is based on how I feel. So, but making comments or I also try and involve the students, what I observe, watching them, and from time to time, actually, I also ask, actually more often than time to time, I ask my students as well what they think and how they feel about the lessons and the activities as well, because what I feel might be very different from their feelings as well. So and this helped me, and also makes me more aware of what's happening in class. I can because I'm reflecting on what I've been doing, but also on what's happening in class. And it's when I put it on paper, I'm much more aware of what I need to focus on, what needs more work from my part, or what it is that certain students need to work on that I might just overlook otherwise. So
yeah, no, that's really great. And I guess what you're describing there, Hedy, it probably doesn't take you a lot of time to do, does it?
No, it's just a couple of minutes right after the lesson. And what it helps me as well actually is that I often have time with is time management. So it also helped me becoming better at that, since I have these notes to myself.
Yeah. And I think you said a very useful thing there as well about bringing it back into the classroom and asking the students and getting feedback from students. I think that's important. And You know, I think someone in the chat room earlier said about transferring the theory of CPD back into classroom activities, and how do we know that it's working? And I do think that's a very important point, because it's easy to attend a webinar or go to a conference or congratulate yourself for a nice lesson and then move on. But if you've got a bigger goal, I think then you want to know where you want to be. What does it mean to have achieved it? And how do you know when you've achieved that goal? And the students need to come into that, and the students' progress needs to come into that. So you need to have some evidence. And again, that's where working with a buddy, working with a friend, online or face-to-face, working with your line manager. I know when I was Director of Studies, these were the enjoyable parts of my job. And so don't be shy, no matter where you are in your career as a teacher. Go to your line manager. Your Director of Studies is never going to turn around and say, I can't do this, I'm not interested in this, you'll need to find your own way. The Director of Studies will be delighted, I guarantee you, if a teacher comes and says, I'm really interested in evolving in a certain area, developing in a certain area, I would like to reach this goal. Can you help me? Can you break it down? Can you observe me? The Director of Studies will love that. I used to love this in my role as Director of Studies. It's so much more interesting than dealing with complaints and emails and numbers. And so, you know, never hold back. Find your guidance from your line manager here as well, if you're in a school, or if you don't have access to that. As I said, you know, the online community there, find a buddy, make a friend, etc. But in terms of bringing CPD into the classroom, so you want to have a plan. You want to know when you've reached your goal. What does it mean to know that you've succeeded? And to evidence it. And that can be through student feedback. It can be general student feedback. But again, with student feedback, don't just ask the easy questions. Now, you don't want to bother your students too much. So let's be clear. We don't want questionnaire after questionnaire going out to students in their paid lesson time. But you can ask 2 or 3 questions. You can get them involved in some kind of project that you've set yourself to do with professional development. And ask the difficult questions. What didn't go well there? What worked for you when I was doing that? And what didn't work? What could I have done better there? And students, again, will like to be involved. Get a balance, though. And again, share that with your Director of Studies. Because as I say, don't take up too much of the student time with chatting about your own professional development. So get a fine balance there. But I was also going to mention about evidence-based observation. And I don't know how many of you in the audience have heard of this. But I find it a remarkable tool. Evidence-based observation. If you don't know what it is, Google it. I know there's a really good webinar still online by Sylvana Richardson talking about evidence-based observation. But again, you can design it to yourself. So let's just think about a simple process for this. You can do it in self-observation, but it's better with a person. So let's say I'm going into the classroom. Hedy, I want Hedy to come and observe me. But Hedy's not coming in to write subjective notes about what she sees. She's coming in to look at evidence. And I, as the teacher, I identify 2 or 3 areas I want to focus on. So for example, I want to focus on, am I including the whole group? Or am I favouring the ones that ask the most questions, the ones that are more demanding? So that's one area I want to focus on. I want to focus on, am I including the whole group? I also want to focus on echoing. Do I just keep saying back the same thing to the students? Or correction, for example. So we have 2 or 3 things that are my developmental areas. Hedy comes in, and all Hedy does is she makes a note of how many times, for example, I speak to each of the students. Let's say I get 10 students. So Hedy draws a little grid of the 10 students in the classroom. And she just does a diagram. So you can see that I speak to student 2, I ask student 2 question after question after question, and I've forgotten student 9. She gathers evidence. Instructions or corrections, how many times do I correct? An example, she writes down the words that I use. She writes down how many times I do this. And then we meet together and she holds the evidence up and we have a discussion. we come to a conclusion about this, and then we can set future goals as to how I'm going to build upon this, or whatever conclusions we decide to make. It's possibly quite difficult to explain this without any visuals, but I'm happy to have a further dialogue about this. But do Google it, evidence-based observation. So in terms of joining up your CPD and the theory to the classroom, read the blogs, have the discussions, go to the webinars, have your goal, have your area of interest, bring it into the classroom and try to gather some evidence of how this is working and how you're doing it. I think so that everything is joining up together and including student feedback. I hope that makes sense, because that was quite a long explanation there, I think.
It's very clear, I think.
Someone, sorry, Hedy?
It just makes us more aware of what we do in the classroom, because very often we run on autopilot.
Yeah.
And we are not aware of how we act, what we do, what we say. Mm-hmm. So it's very important. And I also love the way when you say that you said, Fiona, about involving students in our reflection as well, because this way they feel that they are really, we do not just listen to them, but we really hear them, what they think.
Most definitely, yes. I mean, of course, we want to develop in areas that we're interested in, but it must be with the student at the heart of that. This is not all about us. It's about us working for the good of our students, which then goes back to feeding into the organisation, the reputation of the organisation that we work for. I think somebody as well, so I saw something else in the chat room about, do we focus on the areas that we're not doing so well, or do we focus on our strengths and our interests? And again, I think that's quite a complex question. I think it needs to be a bit of both, and again, possibly guided by a more senior person, a more experienced person, or your line manager, your director of studies. And it depends where you are in your career as well. So for example, if you feel that you're really struggling with high level grammar in the classroom, and that's an area that you need to work on, if you're teaching high levels, you need to work on it. I would say, whether you're interested or not, you need to find an interest in that, because that's a key part of our job if we want to progress to teach those higher levels. But within that, you can also find interesting areas. So maybe you find out about guided discovery. How do you use guided discovery in the classroom with higher levels? So find an area of interest within the weaker area that you want to focus on, if that's possible. Making it fun, I think, for you is going to be more successful. I'm just reading here in the chat. If you can't get another teacher to observe you, you can also record yourself and just do the same, gather evidence, most definitely. And I think recording yourself is invaluable. Don't shy away from it. I mean, I was sitting listening to myself there, obviously. You know, I can hear myself in my head, and you know, none of us really like it, but I think we need to get over it, because it's such a great tool to develop, isn't it? And in terms of recording yourself and observing yourself, it doesn't need to be for a full lesson. You can decide that you want to record yourself for 10 minutes. I remember working with a teacher once who he spoke really, really loudly. He shouted. And so you could see sometimes students were jumping away because our teacher was shouting. And I said, look, let's just record yourself, but record yourself for 5 minutes in the classroom when you're giving an instruction. And sure enough, he came back to me and he said, yes, I shout. I didn't realize I had such a loud voice. You just need to do that for 5 minutes. Listen to how you give an instruction. Press the record on your phone for 5 minutes. Record your students with their consent, of course. Turn the camera around and see how the students are engaging. When directors of studies, when other teachers go in to observe classes, we often see things with the group dynamic that you might not see yourself as the teacher who's who's delivering a lesson. And so if you can film how your students are engaging and watch it back, it's really insightful as well. So yes, I'm all for self-observation to gather evidence and to work on your own development. The comment goes on to say, the reason why I asked is because many teachers think CPD is about generating change and improving, and therefore there is no need to focus on what works, which I disagree with. Oh, I do as well, yes. You know, just because I speak Portuguese kind of intermediate level, I'm not going to stop there. I want to keep building on it. I'm not going to just say, yippee, well done, I speak Portuguese to intermediate level. I want to build upon that. It's not, you're quite right, that the person who's commented there. So it's not just about improving and changing, it's about also building on what you like. And again, to give you an example here, we can look at action research. And for experienced teachers who are maybe starting to feel a little bored, a little stale, they're always doing the same things, set yourself a task, something that you are good at and you want to develop in. And this is something that people do when they're doing a master's in ELT, they do some action research. And this is a big part of CPD at a higher level, where you can find an area of interest, do the research, reflect, share it with your peers, experiment, reflect again, share it with your peers, and finally come to some conclusion that is a bigger thing than just a small piece of CPD, do some action research. And again, if anyone's interested in a plan for that, I'm happy to share that or to share it through gallery teachers, through Hedy or through anyone else that I can help with. I have a lovely action research plan for people who maybe want to take the CPD a little further. I was wondering as well, I can see there's one more question there to ask. I was just wondering about the reflective tool that I looked at, and I really would say this gives you such a good picture of your life. And I remember when I first discovered this, it's a systems thinking tool that's used in business a lot for decision making. And I've broken it down and made it a lot more simplistic possibly. But starting it, which I said to you, try and fit into 5 minutes after this session, and then keep coming back to it for a couple of weeks. And it really does make you identify where you're possibly wasting some time and where there's more time to put some energy into your development and how you can improve. And I think that feeds into your career. This will really build upon your career. And I just find it's a very useful tool when you're at a crossroads, when you're getting a bit bored, to try that tool. So if you don't do anything else, as I said, then please do it.
I agree with you, Fiona, and especially when we feel stuck or when we feel a little bit grumpy or you know, not our happiest, because then you sit down and I really love that you have a look at the positives, the benefits. What do I gain from this? What do I get? How does it serve me? But also what I give in getting to that. So both of it. And when we sit down, we can see that it's not only black or white, but you know, there are other hues as well mixed into that. So it's not only negative necessarily. I'm just, you know, feeling this way, but I still definitely get something. But actually, I don't know. That's why we need to write it down, really, to see that it's really. And what I love is this holistic approach. That it's not only work, and my professional life, but my life as a whole. So bringing my family and friends, my well-being as well, and how I feel about it. It's I love it. I definitely do this.
No, very good. I think, you know, we're never going to become terribly rich in our professions, so we must enjoy it. And I saw that Adrian Underhill was in the audience earlier. I know he's left now, but I remember going to a training session of his a while ago, and he talked about this. He said he said along the lines, I don't want to misquote him, but the idea that I took away from it was that I agree, I don't like the idea of work-life balance, because work is not separate to my life. Work is a part of my life, and I want all of my life to be enjoyable and rewarding. And yes, of course, you need to have a balance between the in work and the out of work, but we need to take pleasure. And I think you take pleasure in your work when you set yourself challenges and move yourself forward and move yourself out of your comfort zone. You know, you feel good afterwards. You hate I say yes to things. I've found this in myself. My personality is that I say yes and then I panic and I get nervous. But I love that I've said yes, because the feeling afterwards when you have moved out of my comfort zone and made myself do something is so good. I encourage you all, if you haven't experienced that, do it.
Exactly, exactly.
Let me just check. I think there's one more question that I can see here. So Maria Joseph asks, I liked when you mentioned short and sweet CPD. Could you extend on this? I think I'm a strong believer. I think sometimes there is a place for attending a day, a week's training session. Now, these are great, but also just keeping it short. You know, I'm becoming more and more a fan of 15-minute sessions, 20-minute sessions, when I'm delivering a workshop for staff or when I'm attending. At the moment, I'm going to so many different webinars. You might be the same. And so I love when I see that something is 15 minutes sometimes, and it really gets us to focus. More and more conferences are doing this as well, where you've got 15 minutes to get something over. And as the speaker, very often, you don't have time to waffle. You've got to give a clear message. And so I like it short and sweet and punchy so that people are taking something away. So 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And the same with reading. I mean, reading is wonderful. There's so much out there to read. Keep it short and sweet. You know, there's so much when I'm catching the train to work, I might just quickly look at something that's even come up in my Facebook page, and from British Council, or a blog from Sandy Millen, if you follow Sandy Millen. Reading a blog takes us 3 minutes. You know, that's it, short and sweet. So I hope that's answered your question there, Maria. Let me just see now. I did have another question. I think as well, what I would say to you is one of the reflective questions that I had at the beginning, and what I talked about was recognizing your achievements. And again, do this on a regular basis. You may already do this. But I think teaching, and also, you know, what I do now, but teaching certainly, it's quite isolating. You go into the classroom, you're your own manager, and then you walk out of the classroom. Sometimes students will say thank you, but more often than not, they won't. They'll switch their phones on, start chatting to their friends. And then you walk out and you move into the next thing. And I think looking back and what you've achieved each day, and also for years now, I've tried to do this twice a year, where I write down everything I've done so far in the year. And it really, really boosts you, and it allows you to find new direction and where you want to go. If you think, my goodness, look at all these things I've already done. And so I do think, you know, getting into the habit of thinking, what have I done today? What have I achieved? Because in every single lesson, we have achieved a lot. And then how do you build on that to feed into your CPD? But also to feed into boosting your morale and really building your confidence as a teacher, no matter where you are in your career. We do more good than bad. You know, as I said, we beat ourselves up sometimes thinking, oh, I should have done this better and that better. But no, think of all the things that we've done so well in a lesson, in a day, in our year. And I think that just creates positivity and openness for us to move on and keep developing.
True. And we also need to probably sensitize, some of us sensitize ourselves of noticing what we have achieved, because we just overlook all those things and take it for granted.
Yes. Yeah, no, very good point. I've got a puppy at the moment, and it's really reminding me of how to recognize small achievements. If she manages to sit, I think, oh, for goodness, yeah, thank goodness she's done it. She's done it. What a small achievement, but it's a big achievement for her.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I'm just looking to see if we have any more questions online. Again, going back to the CPD that I spoke about as well, what I would say is, if you're a freelancer, or if you feel that you don't have the support that you want in your organization, start something. All of this, apart from it being very rewarding for yourself, you just need 2 other people to form a group. And a discussion group that's led by you, that comes from you, will really meet the needs of what you want. Don't wait for other people to do this for you. Set up a discussion group and give yourselves a goal that you're going to, maybe there's 3 of you, maybe there's 4 of you, you meet online, you meet face to face once a fortnight. Keep it real. Don't set yourself too much of a task. And decide that you're all going to read something on a particular area of interest and discuss it, like a book club for ELT. Make it fun, make it enjoyable. And these kinds of things, I mean, as someone who recruits as well in my school, seeing something like that on a CV and hearing someone talking about it at interview, that to me is a big plus. If I see that someone is taking control of their own professional development and being proactive rather than waiting for it to come to them. Do we have any questions coming in? Let me see what else I've got in the chat room as well.
We can also have a look at the reflective questions and
Yeah.
ask the audience.
Yes, I do wonder if there's anyone online now who would like to share anything with us about their achievements. And don't be shy. This is your time to be positive about ourselves. If you want to share anything that you've achieved in the chat room, or please, if you do have a question, or if you want to speak, and I think we can unmute you.
Yes. Maria is raising her hand. So.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Maria.
Hi, hello. Interesting about this when you mentioned about this year's achievements, because of the scenario and with the COVID and all that, it has been pretty tough for most of us because of not being able to teach face to face. But I mean, it has been productive in a different way. I mean, and what I myself and other of my colleagues have achieved just was to find webinars and discuss amongst us with the things we've been doing and how we are coping with everything, and getting ideas, feeding each other with new ideas from each other, and of course, and appreciating very much this wide offer of webinars available. And of course, I mean, I have to praise gallery teachers as well for providing us for providing us with so many courses that we all enjoy very much. And talking about this present this workshop we are participating now, I mean, I think it's fantastic, because I've recommended it to all my colleagues because it's something that we used to do. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to open the school on a face-to-face basis. That we would do these workshops every week. There would be, a workshop, continuous, CPD, and it when you said sweet and short, it just brought back the memory that that's what we do. I mean, we just the workshops are short, perhaps maximum 45 minutes, because we discuss things at the end, but it works much better like that.
Yeah.
And the achievements, I mean, professionally, perhaps they haven't been great achievements, but the interest to carry on learning and knowing more, learning more about ELT, it's still there.
Completely, Maria, and I think it's no small feat, to be honest. It's been a very challenging time for us individually and also for the industry. And I think every single time we attend a webinar, we participate, we start to chat to people, I think that's an achievement. And certainly at the moment, you know, to have the headspace and the time and the energy to still be passionate about what we're doing is a fabulous achievement. So, you know, I congratulate yourself every single time you've attended something, because it's difficult at the moment. It really is. And I think, I mean, talking of the webinars, I think it's great that we've got access to all of these webinars, and there are things that we can do all over the world now. And that's the same with our students. Students are coming online from countries that we maybe didn't have in the past. But, you know, I was at a conference, I delivered a webinar a few weeks ago in Pakistan. You know, I would never have been able to do that. So, you know, and been able to dip into so many different kinds of webinars. That's something that I would say, if you're looking for something out of the ordinary to do, don't only come along to English English language webinars, but pop into other things that are being discussed that are accessible to us as well. I've learned so much in the last year, and I'm sure Maria and I'm sure other people on here have as well. And the fact that we're still working, we've learned to move online, is an incredible achievement for all of us.
Yeah, Fiona, I totally agree on what you just said about not only for English teacher, not only attending the English language teacher workshop, but others, like that's very important, because, for example, like we actually did a couple which is not very directly related to teacher teaching English, and that was very popular as well. Because it helped teachers to develop to think outside the teaching English environment.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and I think that's become more accessible for us all as well now, because we can cross over. We can easily go into management webinars, we can go into marketing webinars, we can go into well-being webinars, and we can really kind of test the water and find out what other things are going on, and engage in it and meet other people as well. I've met so many people in the last year online and made friends, people that I've never met. I think there's a whole new world that has opened up to us, and it's about taking the plunge as well and introducing yourself online to others. I mean, Hedy and Janice, I didn't know you before this, and now, you know, you're my pals.
Thank you so much for your input and answering all our questions, Fiona, today.
Thank you very much.